All right. Let's play the fun game of where could Antonio Brown end up? Because for my money, and really based on what the Pittsburgh Steelers themselves and Art Rooney II's been saying, Antonio Brown's not going to be with the Pittsburgh Steelers to start next season. This is another edition of Mic Drop here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, coming at you from the Beaver County Auto Studios up above Market Square here in downtown Pittsburgh. I am your host, Mike Asti, and we're going to go down the line. Thought we'd play a little game here. I'm going to debunk some, maybe some are possibilities. We've heard some grumbling and some rumors of Antonio Brown even having interest in the San Francisco 49ers because of Jerry Rice. We've heard rumors of him in the Carolina Panthers because of Instagram and social media posts with Cam Newton and because of the need there. We've heard rumors on some other teams, and it's going to take a first-round draft pick to get Antonio Brown, or at least you'd hope, since that's what it took for Amari Cooper earlier in this season. Even though how much of an impact he had, Antonio Brown is widely considered the best receiver in the game. So we're going to go 1 to 19. The Steelers pick 20. Obviously, I'm saying the Steelers are not going to be with Antonio Brown next season, and the Steelers are going to be trading Antonio Brown. And while Art Rooney II said he would not be releasing Antonio Brown to the streets, and they want to get something for him, and obviously they're not going to just give him up for nothing, they're going to want a first-round draft pick. So that brings up again. We're going to go 1 to 19, these teams in the NFL draft based on the NFL draft order here, and any trades or anything like that might throw a monkey wrench into this. But as we stand now, what teams maybe could have a need for Antonio Brown? Which teams wouldn't make any sense at all? Which teams maybe would consider trading that draft pick for Antonio Brown? Which teams would not? Kind of quieting the conversation a little bit here, trying to make some sense of it. Because again, Art Rooney II said this phrase that made this possible and made me really believe there's no hope of Antonio Brown and the Steelers reconciling and him being back next season. Art Rooney II said in an interview with Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that he could not possibly envision a scenario where Antonio Brown is with the Steelers come training camp. Now, while I'm sure there are many in that locker room who would love to have him back and are friends with him and want to have the best receiver in football on their team, and I'm also sure many in that locker room, maybe cough Big Ben, don't really want Antonio Brown back on that team, and it would be locker room divided no matter how you slice it. And Juju's on record, Juju Smith-Schuster on record saying on YouTube that he wants Antonio Brown back and he helps him be better and they work together well as a tandem, which is true. But he quit on his teammates. He quit on his teammates leaving that game in Week 17, midway through the game, at halftime, leaves, stands there in a mink coat beforehand, doesn't take the MRI they direct him to take. The Steelers give him some punishment. He doesn't play in that game. And then doesn't communicate with this team. Has not even communicated with the Rooneys who have paid him the money. Unlike Le'Veon Bell, they've paid him the money. They've shown him the money, for a Jerry Maguire quote. And he's not communicated with them. So Tomlin, it appeared, was fed up in his end of the season press conference that I attended. And it now appears that Art Rooney II's very much fed up and cannot envision a scenario where Antonio Brown is back with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, because of that, here we go. And this will lead us in, and this isn't the team with the number 1 draft pick, but this will lead us in because they're the team with the number 2 draft pick, so they're early on here in our first pairing. But here we go, SteelersNow.com. SteelersNow.com. Go there right now. Type it in your browser. Tab over if you're on a computer watching and listening to this show, or throw it up anywhere, mobile device. SteelersNow.com. Also follow us on Twitter at PGHSteelersNow on Twitter. Jerry Rice and Antonio Brown, he wants to come here really bad. Apparently, Jerry Rice and Antonio Brown had a conversation. This also apparently was also on Instagram Live, and they had a little live session and then talked a little bit afterwards, and Antonio Brown told the GOAT, Jerry Rice, the man he idolized. He's been idolizing Jerry Rice ever since he was a pup. Has pictures of Jerry Rice all through his house. He wants to be the GOAT like Jerry Rice. Admires Jerry Rice's work ethic, and Antonio Brown has a work ethic on the field for sure and works hard at his craft in the off-season 2 training. but admires Jerry Rice that way. And so much so, he told Jerry Rice, apparently, according to Jerry Rice, that he wants to be a San Francisco 49er. So we'll get there in a second, but here it is. Team with the number one draft pick is not the San Francisco 49ers. It is the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Arizona Cardinals brought in Cliff Kingsbury, who did not even have a winning record in college in the Big 12, where there is no defense played, and I know I'm a WVU alum. I'm watching a lot of Big 12 games these days. No defense there. And yet had an under 500 record, didn't even have a winning record in college with Texas Tech. So clearly his swag and maybe good looks and charm, I don't know however you want to slice it, helped land him the head coaching job with the Arizona Cardinals when no other college team wanted him to be their head coach. In fact, was going to be the offensive coordinator with USC prior to the Cardinals calling him. And in the whole mantra of we want to find the next Sean McVay for his success with the Rams, they hired Cliff Kingsbury to be the head coach with the Arizona Cardinals. And there's rumors that he wants Kyler Murray, who is going to come out in the NFL draft and has chosen football, and maybe he's going to trade Rosen because of that, but right now Rosen's there as the young quarterback. I mean, they're a little bit of a mess themselves, to say the least. They're the number one pick. They're the worst team in the NFL, 3-13. Nothing really to be impressed with there. They need offensive line. They need receivers. They need a defense. It's all there. This is NFL.com, so they're giving you the 4-1-1. And really, there's question marks about on quarterback, even though they right now have a young quarterback, and maybe you're going to have another young quarterback. But depending on how that all shakes out, not even really sure based on rumors who their quarterback will be. Most likely Rosen, but it's still a work in progress there. And while that would be tremendous to have weapons and have a weapon like Antonio Brown, a young quarterback, the more weapons you give them, the better they're off, obviously. And a team that bad would love to have a weapon like Antonio Brown. I can't see him wanting to be their number one. He'd hate it there, and it would just be tons of drama, which he could still be traded there. It's not up to him. But number two, and more importantly, they're not going to trade the number one draft pick for Antonio Brown. He's the best receiver in football for sure, but that would be widely unprecedented. And they have so many other needs that I've detailed this in past shows, which is why the New England Patriots are still clicking on their dynasty and have won championships without Randy Moss and didn't win one with him, even though maybe on the best team of that era. But the little grumbling from him, the little moaning from him, gone. When he was moaning with Minnesota, gone. Same thing in Oakland. And teams are able to win without that type of guy. Same thing with the Bengals and Chad Ochocinco. Eventually you just got sick of it, and he had to move on. And Terrell Owens is a perfect example where several teams got sick of one of the greatest receivers of all time and is a Hall of Famer and should have been their first ballot. But San Francisco, namely, they've dealt with that drama before in that franchise. They know what it's about. They got sick of T.O. The Eagles got sick of T.O. and deactivated him mid-season a year after going to the Super Bowl. The Cowboys got sick of him, and so on and so forth there for T.O. It was the life of his career. Team Obliterator was his nickname for that purpose. But the teams were able to win without him. It wasn't like they immediately went down the tubes without him. The receiver is a position that you can replace, which is one of the reasons why the Steelers are going to trade Antonio Brown. They have Juju emerging now. They feel like they can replace him there as a number one receiver. Juju could be the number one. James Washington could maybe step in and get more looks, and Ben loves him so much and maybe do well as a number two. And you're never going to replace the exact production from Antonio Brown. He's the best receiver in football. Had a 1,200-plus yard receiving season, including missing a game. Had 100-plus catches again. Had 15-plus touchdown receptions. That's an historic year. Only been done a few times in NFL history. Randy Moss is one of those guys. I mean, Antonio Brown's on a Hall of Fame pace. Might even already be there if he retires today. He's great. Just ask him. He'll tell you how great he is. But the Cardinals have so many other needs. They can't just go get a wide receiver and give up that number one draft pick. Wouldn't make sense. Would be ridiculous. They're not going to do it. Number two is the San Francisco 49ers. And I'll throw it up there again because it's on SteelersNow.com. Another shameless plug, SteelersNow.com. Jerry Rice on Antonio Brown. He wants to come here really bad, and that's the GOAT. Jerry Rice referring to Antonio Brown wanting to be a San Francisco 49er. Brown certainly idolizes Jerry Rice and always has. And that might be a decent fit, to be honest. I know they're number 2 draft pick, and why would you trade the number 1? You're not going to trade the number 2 either. That's very, very high, obviously. But they're a San Francisco 49er team that even though they weren't good last year and they absolutely struggled, it was a 4-12 season, they were miserable. They had expectations coming into the year because they brought in a quarterback who then got hurt. They didn't really have a legitimate quarterback most of the year. They thought they were going to have an all-pro quarterback, granted not mightily experienced, with only 7 starts and mostly behind Tom Brady, but they thought Garoppolo was going to be that guy, and they thought he was going to be able to lead them to the future in the promised land again, like they have had with Hall of Fame quarterbacks in the past. So if he gets healthy, maybe he'd love to have a weapon like Antonio Brown. And maybe they feel like they're farther along than the Cardinals would be because they feel like they have that quarterback who can be their future if he's healthy. They brought Richard Sherman in defensively. They need more help defensively, obviously, but they're a team that thought they could win last year and underachieved. No one really thought the Cardinals were going to win. People thought the Niners could win. They're not as many pieces away, and he'd love to go there, by all reports. It would make sense. Maybe they could win quicker with him. Le'Veon Bell previously was in some rumors with the 49ers, and maybe they would mortgage the future to get a guy now to win now because it's been made clear they want to win now. So the Niners making it so clear they want to win now may allow them to, unlike the Cardinals who need so much help and are so far away with so many question marks, the Niners thought they were going to win this year. They thought if Garoppolo was healthy, they'd win. So maybe if he gets healthy, they'd love to pair him with Brown. It would really help him, too, in his maturation process since he is inexperienced. And maybe they feel like they can win sooner with a guy like Brown. So that's not too crazy. To move things along here and speed this up, Jets and Raiders 3 and 4. Obviously, 2 bad teams. The Raiders a little more question marks than the Jets, though. John Gruden there, trading a bunch of players, trying to acquire draft picks. There's still more building for the future beyond just next season. Those draft picks and getting a number 1 for Amari Cooper was a wise and a great trade when you think about the long run, despite all the jokes being made against John Gruden this past season. I don't know how long he's going to go into that contract, and it was a bit of a laughingstock this year, giving up Khalil Mack and giving up Amari Cooper, but they acquire all those draft picks. They're building for the future. It could be there. Derek Carr might easily not be the quarterback of the future, but who knows? Maybe John Gruden, the quarterback whisperer, could get something out of him. And they were the one who traded for Martavis Bryant a season ago, so they're dealing with the Steelers and their dramatic wide receivers, and it wouldn't be too shocking. We've known the Raiders to do things like this in the past. Although they're not going to do it because, as I said, they're a team that doesn't care about all pros right now. They're building for the future and the long haul with John Gruden, and they're trading all pros for draft picks. The Raiders are trading all pros for draft picks, Khalil Mack, Amari Cooper, etc. They want to acquire draft picks and build for the future. So it wouldn't make sense to give up on a 4th draft pick, a number 4 pick in the first round, which is a great player almost most of the time, or you have a chance at a great player at least. They're not going to give that up for Antonio Brown. Don't see it. The Jets with Darnold, they're moving for the future. They also need some wide receiver help. They need a lot more in terms of explosive weapons on offense. They are a team that if Sam Darnold keeps progressing and stays healthy like Garoppolo, question in San Francisco on his health, question mark there already with Sam Darnold in a rookie year. He got injured. Maybe they could be a team that would do that. They're closer than the Raiders are. The Raiders are acquiring these draft picks. They're not going to bring an all-pro in and give up the number 4 overall pick. Maybe the Jets, though, at number 3. They're a better chance in this pairing, but I doubt either one will be bringing in Antonio Brown. Buccaneers at 5, New York Giants at 6. We're going to immediately exclude the New York Giants, obviously. They have Odell Beckham Jr., who also could argue is the best receiver in football. He just got tons of money. If there's any issues with Antonio Brown sharing the field with Juju and then the fact that he was team MVP and the fact they're a receiver tandem now, it's going to be the same problem with Odell Beckham Jr. And while they may love to hang out in New York City together, and that would be a social media phenomenon, I mean, they would go viral every day. Anything they post, they would just be buck wild out there while they would party. Odell and AB on the same field on the same team probably can't coexist, and the money would just be crazy. They're not going to do it. Wide receiver is not what they need either. They need a quarterback of the future. They need some lineman help. Not going to be with the Giants. Number 5 overall pick, I don't see it either. The new head coach down there, Bruce Arians down there, a retread, but a veteran who usually has success. So turn things around. They need defensive help. They're 5-11. They were kind of competitive. You need to try to get something out of Jameis Winston. Granted, I don't really see him being the quarterback of the future with much success. He's just too much of an idiot, really. And they're not a team that usually does things like this. They don't bring in malcontent receivers. They deactivated Keyshawn Johnson many, many years ago. It's just not going to happen. They're never an explosive team. I can't see it. He's also would hate it there. Jaguars at number 7, Lions at number 8. Obviously, the Lions for many years have been trying to replace Calvin Johnson, but kind of have. The Golden Tate was there, played very, very well. They haven't really needed receiver help, although they obviously could have more weapons at the disposal of Matt Stafford, who threw for the least amount of yards in a single season his whole career this year. Always over 4,000 every year of his career, not this year. So maybe more weapons are what they need, which is what NFL Network says. They also need defensive help, DBs. They need a lot of help. For a 6-10 team, they really need the help of a 2-14 type of team. And they need the receiver, but I can't see them giving up the number 8 overall pick. It's the same thing with the Cardinals at 1 or the Raiders at 4. They're trying to stockpile draft picks to build for the future, and they need a lot of help. They need much more than one player, where a receiver is not going to make the difference for that team. They're not going to do it. Jaguars at number 7, they don't just know. Just know. They were a playoff team a year ago. They need wide receiver help. They need quarterback help, though, too, with Blake Bortles now being gone and really wasn't helping them much offensively while he was there, with the exception of against Antonio Brown's Steelers team in the division round of the playoffs last year. That's still fine to me how Blake Bortles marched up and down the field against that Steelers defense. It wasn't against AB, but still, it's funny and it always will be funny to me. They're just obviously not going to be doing this. They also need to rebuild, and there's just no way. They're bringing in AB in his contract over there to Jacksonville. The Bills at 9, the Broncos at 10. Now, the Bills are somewhat interesting. They usually always do need a wide receiver. They need a wide receiver now. That's what NFL Network says there. 6-10. They were an average team. A year ago, they made the playoffs, which is surprising to say for the Bills. That was the first time in the century they made the postseason and broke the NFL's longest drought. But there's still question marks there. Quarterback, offensive line needs to protect better. Defensively, they need some help. A lot more needs there. They have the number 9 overall pick. It's not a top 5 pick. They're getting more into the middle of the road here. There's no guarantee with this pick by any means. But Antonio Brown would hate it there, by the way. He would never re-sign there. He would cause tons of drama, which they wouldn't want to put up with. The fan base would hate him, and he would just stomp his feet the entire time being there in the snow in Buffalo, which is 10 times worse weather than Pittsburgh. He'd always be in South Beach. He'd never be there. He'd go to South Beach midweek. I have friends covering the Bills, and it would be funny for them, but it's just not going to happen. I don't see it either. Number 10, though, Denver Broncos. This might be the best team yet that we've talked about. And I don't mean record-wise. Obviously, the number 10, they played better than the other teams so far this year. But they might be the best fit for Antonio Brown. So far, at least. I know Emmanuel Sanders is there, and I know he spoke out nationally against AB, or at least his maturity, and even spoke out against Big Ben and the fact that he wasn't the greatest leader in the NFL, and he should be not throwing receivers and people under the bus as a quarterback, and I talked about that in the past too. We'll leave that for another show. But so that does potentially leave some issues there, because he did say that Antonio Brown quit on his team, which he did, but a future teammate and a past teammate of his calling him out nationally, AB probably didn't like that, and he consumes all the media, so he heard it. But they need a wide receiver. They need another wide receiver. They need more offensive help, especially with a question mark at quarterback. There's still a quality defense. There's still a team that was on the verge and kind of the cusp of maybe being a contender throughout the year. They played the Steelers. Played well against Pittsburgh somehow. Case Keenum's not really the answer at quarterback, so that leaves that a major question mark. And he was the free agent guy a season ago. It's not crazy. Emmanuel Sanders and him could maybe repair those comments, repair the relationship. They were the super friends at one point with the Steelers. Maybe it'll happen here again. And they're also a team that could win and could be on the rise. They're not too far away. It's not the fantastic weather, but he doesn't have that in Pittsburgh either. It's not Buffalo. Number 10, it's not too crazy. We're moving along here. Number 11. Cincinnati Bengals in the division, never going to happen. Obviously, A.J. Green's there, is one of the best receivers in the game when healthy. And I know Emmanuel Sanders is there, but he's no A.J. Green. And they need a lot more help. They need a lot of defensive help. They potentially even need a quarterback, depending on Andy Dalton's future. I don't agree with this tight end assessment. I think they're okay there. Linebacker, they definitely do have a need at linebacker. They were competitive this year with all the injuries and finally are going into a new era after they finally fired Marvin Lewis, and it should have happened years ago. But pick 11, that'd be a quality pick for the Steelers to obtain, but they're just not going to trade Antonio Brown in the division. It'll never happen, never happen. Number 12, though. Number 12 was also interesting, and maybe even more interesting than Denver, but similar vein to Denver. Obviously, the weather, and he might not enjoy himself too much there, but it's an historic franchise like the Steelers, usually a pedigree of winning, which he'll still want to win even though he wants to get his money. He's already got paid, so he's going to want to win. The more winning you do will allow the drama to be minimized. There was less drama a season ago when they had 13 wins. This year, they disappoint, they don't make the playoffs, and tons of drama erupts. So more winning you do, less drama. Aaron Rodgers, a future Hall of Fame quarterback. He's always going to find whoever's open, and Adams or whoever else. He's going to be able to turn something into nothing, or nothing into something. He's going to turn nothing into something. And Antonio Brown would be the best weapon he's ever had by far, and he would love it because he's complained about a lack of weapons there the last few years and an exodus of weapons besides Adams. He'd love if he could pair Deontay Adams with Antonio Brown, and Adams would immediately be the number 2. Antonio Brown's the best receiver in football, and I know he loves Adams so much, and the fans do, and he's a security blanket as a receiver there. But Antonio Brown's going to get the deep ball. He's going to really open things up for that offense. He's more explosive. He'd be a better receiver option and be the best weapon Aaron Rodgers has ever had. And Jimmy Graham and et cetera. They have weapons there. They just underachieved. Defensively, they needed some help. They weren't a great defense. They needed more offensive line help as well to keep Aaron Rodgers healthy. They were 6-9-1. It was another miserable year for the Packers. They've been underachieving a little bit recently. Mike McCarthy's gone, so it's a new era of Packer football as well. Rodgers wants the weapons. They have been known to take a little bit more risks recently than in the past, although the issue with this franchise is this. If you go a little further back and peel the curtain back further and go to the history of the Packer franchise and moves, they don't do things like this. He'd fit in there on the field. It makes sense on the field. This is why the Packers are brought up all the time. Rodgers and Brown, it makes sense on the field. And they might be a receiver away, an explosive receiver away from really being contender, or at least once again being able to win the NFC North, which is not incredibly difficult of a division. They could turn things around off the Bears. It's still competitive with them. They have a great defense. Offense still suspect. The Vikings missed the playoffs. They now have questions. Kirk Cousins was good, but didn't really turn things around there. There's questions on that team, and same thing with Detroit, we've already discussed in picks earlier. So the Packers could turn that division around in a hurry, especially when you have one of the best players in football and future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers. Giving him more help will do that. A weapon like Antonio Brown would be the best weapon he's ever had and could really open up the offense and make them more explosive to be able to win in a hurry and really cure a need of theirs. Pairing him with Adams would make them one of the best offensive in football immediately. Adams, Antonio Brown, and Aaron Rodgers. But, this is the same franchise that about a decade or so ago could have had Randy Moss before he went to the Patriots. They only needed to trade a third-round draft pick for Randy Moss back then. They didn't want to do it. They thought he was a malcontent. They thought he was a diva. They didn't want to deal with the drama from a drama-filled wide receiver. The greatest receiver in the game then, or one of them then, and certainly one of the best receivers of all time in Randy Moss, who ended up becoming a first-ballot Hall of Famer, and ended up having the best year of his career with Tom Brady and the Patriots. Makes sense, obviously. The best weapon Brady's ever had, as great as Brady is, and success he's still having with different guys. But Randy Moss, the best single weapon he's ever had, best player he's played with, and that gave him the best single season receiving year ever for a receiver. Brady had one of the best years ever, single season for a quarterback in league history. They went undefeated in the regular season before getting upset in the Super Bowl off the David Tyree catch, and still, I don't know, that's crazy. And the New York Giants. Packers could have had him. Brett Favre complained at that time, and he was right. I know they went to the NFC title game too, and Favre's interception cost them, but they still would have been better off to have Moss for a few years, and it'd be hard to say no to that deal. They certainly should have said yes based on what Moss did with New England. It would have been similar with Favre probably, as long as he didn't make the mistakes. But Randy Moss, they said no to Moss. So why then would they trade a first-round draft pick on a team that still has a lot of needs for another diva-filled malcontent receiver who's going to bring a lot of drama, going to bring a lot of attention, going to be all over social media? That's not what the Packer fans and their franchise wants any more than the Steelers. And their fans would put up with it less than the Steelers probably. So Rodgers would want it. So new era Packer football, maybe he'd argue for it. It fit in draft pick-wise, and they're not too far away from winning in their division. But I don't see it happening based on the history of that franchise, based on saying no to Moss many years ago, based on that fan base, and based on how they wouldn't want a drama-filled wide receiver and a malcontent on that team. They might view him as locker room cancer, so I can't see that either. Almost done here. As remember, we're only going to the Steelers draft pick, guys. Number 13, Miami. Number 14, Atlanta. Again, like I was able to do with the Giants, I can immediately eliminate this. There's teams with great receivers. There's Adams on the Packers. There's teams with quality receivers. But it's a whole different story when you have Odell Beckham Jr. in New York, who's a great receiver, one of the best in the game, and also drama, and a little bit of a diva. But while he's not drama and he's not really a diva in Julio Jones, he's also one of the best receivers in football, and offense is not their problem. Matt Ryan in that offense still clicked. Matt Ryan actually had a great year. He had one of the better years of his individual career. It was an MVP type of year if they would have won. And Julio Jones, when healthy, is one of the best receivers in football too when he gets in there. And Matt Ryan always finds him the ball when he's on the field. Antonio Brown would obviously make them better, but it just seems unnecessary. Why give up a number 14 draft pick when you have so many needs and you weren't a good team despite your offense, and you still need help on defense and defensive line and offensive guard and defensive tackle and et cetera. They need to create more sacks and rush the passer more. So with all of that known, they need more help than what Antonio Brown is going to give them, and he's not the weakness. They don't need a wide receiver. They already have Julio Jones. That's not going to happen. Number 13, Miami. Interesting as well. Interesting, like, say, Green Bay. Interesting, like, say, the Denver Broncos. They're not as close to winning as those teams, but they're similar record-wise, so they could argue for it. They also have a question mark at quarterback. Ryan Tannehill's not really the guy. They haven't found a guy to even wait behind him yet, and this is why they're not going to do it. It'd be great to give Tannehill a weapon like Antonio Brown. Maybe a receiver, an explosive receiver who actually loves being in South Beach, lives down there in the offseason. Guys, Antonio Brown's in South Beach right now. Right now. I don't have a tracker on him, but I can bet you he's in South Beach right now. That's where he was when he was throwing furniture off a balcony and almost killing a toddler. He loves South Beach, and who wouldn't? South Beach is phenomenal. And maybe one wide receiver could help them and swing things, but the reason why this isn't going to happen at number 13 is because they need a quarterback. They can't give up a number 13 pick when they have no quarterback there. They have no quarterback for the future. Tannehill's not the answer. They have no one waiting behind him. They need to draft the heir apparent to Ryan Tannehill in this draft. And they need to do it at the number 13th overall pick. Maybe they could wait to a later round. Maybe they could get a guy at second and third round. Maybe they could do some trades and get a Will Grier later in the first round or in the early second round. Okay, maybe. But because of their offensive line needs as well, that if they don't draft a quarterback here, because maybe some wouldn't, Kyler Murray's going to probably be gone. Maybe they think that's too high for Grier. Okay. They really need offensive line help as well, and that's a draft slot for an offensive lineman if you can't get a quarterback. You can find somebody there that's almost a surefire draft pick as an O-lineman that won't be controversial and is a big need of yours. So while the offense is a real problem, they had one of the worst offenses in football, it's because they had a horrible quarterback. They had no one really to rely on there. They need offensive weapons, but they need an O-line more. They need a quarterback more, and I can't see Brown going there and having them mortgage the whole future. But he would love it because he loves South Beach. And who doesn't? Redskins at 15, Carolina Panthers at 16. And I feel like just like the last few, I got to go the 16 before the 15. I got to go the second team here in the bracket above the team picking first because the Carolina Panthers make a lot of sense. As much as it was just social media fun and maybe we're reading too much into it and we're reading a lot on who Antonio Brown follows and when he unfollows the Steelers and takes them out of his Twitter bio, I get it, but it does kind of make sense because the immature diva guys like this, they care a lot about social media. What they do on social media actually does matter. Unfortunately, you may not like it, but it does. That's why Antonio Brown blocking me because I said he should be traded or have been critical of him covering the team is absolutely hilarious, but I still can watch you in other accounts. And I'll get the information when I need it. But in terms of a draft pick that makes sense, where they're not mortgaging too much because it's not a top 5 draft pick where they really need some help, like the Arizona Cardinals or even the Niners, who maybe make some sense, but it's a number 2 draft pick. That's a big risk to give up. The number 16th pick is close to the Steelers, so it's not that much of a jump up. I get you. It would require more than just this draft pick, probably. They'd probably have to trade the number 16 overall draft pick, a late rounder, maybe a current player, something else, a first and a third, a first and a fourth with a current player, something more than maybe just this pick. Again, Maury Cooper went for a first-round draft pick. And Antonio Brown's the best receiver in football. But say that doesn't even happen, regardless, however the trade works, number 16 overall draft pick is still nice. You get a solid player there. Panthers were 7-9. Cam Newton struggled the last few years. He's had about 3 years in a row now that are off years. He's certainly not been elite, and his completion percentage is way down. His completion percentage is barely even in the 50s. He only has, I think, 2 seasons of his whole career that is 60-plus completion percentage, and I got flack for calling him overrated earlier in the season. I went viral there, and people called me racist. Well, no, I'm just being literal. He relied a lot on Christian McCaffrey. Saw it in the Steelers game. You cut him out, you're going to beat the Panthers. They didn't make the playoffs, and would still could be a division they could flip. Drew Brees is getting older. That could be a division they could flip with the Falcons still a question mark, despite as well as Matt Ryan played. There's still room for them to win soon. There is, and they don't need much offensive help, I'll tell you that, but they need wide receivers. You lose Kelvin Benjamin, you don't really replace him. You have Christian McCaffrey who's getting a lot of touches and a lot of yards, whether it be yak yards or yards as a receiver or running back. He's doing a lot for you in Cam Newton. You got to be able to complete passes to somebody else. Maybe having an all-pro wide receiver like Antonio Brown that can stretch the field and can really be explosive for you. Maybe having an AB with you in Cam Newton will help him have a higher, more respectable completion percentage. Because, yes, he's dumping passes off to Christian McCaffrey who's doing things, and yes, that can help another quarterback have a strong completion percentage like a Drew Brees with 70-plus because he's dumping off a bunch of the time and checking down, and maybe Cam Newton doesn't do that. He tries to do it on his own, doesn't want to check down all the time, tries to find somebody. Okay, fine, but be mature. There's nobody else really out there. They need an all-pro wide receiver. They really never have had that since Steve Smith Jr. or Steve Smith Sr. And maybe AB's the guy. Him and Cam Newton would probably get along. They're similar personalities. They're friends. They both care about social media a lot. So maybe it might be drama there. Trust me, it might be drama. They both immature, around similar ages. They're both very, very immature. Remember the comments that Cam Newton made at a female reporter a couple years ago. Very, very immature. But it could be a McNabb T.O. situation where one great year, maybe it's a homecoming. They're similar players, similar ages, similar personalities. Maybe it works there. It eventually didn't work because T.O. just became too much of a problem. They had to deactivate him, but they did go to the Super Bowl together. So it worked out for that 1 year. And who knows the future of Antonio Brown after this, but they just need one trade partner for the Steelers to ship him out of town because Art Rooney II, again, as they opened the show, cannot envision a scenario where he is on the Pittsburgh Steelers come training camp. Says it all right there. If he can't envision it, how could you? It's not about what you want anymore or what you would do. It's about what's going to happen. And Antonio Brown's not going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler next season. It's not going to happen. So the Panthers are an absolute fit. They need a receiver, It could really help Cam Newton turn things around. It could really help him find another weapon and really explode that offense. It would help them be able to quickly turn things around and maybe win in that division. They might have one great year out of it, even if it doesn't go any further. They could maybe get back to a Super Bowl with a weapon like that. That receiver could maybe be their difference. While they need other help, there's no guarantee in the top 16 here. This isn't like a top 5 pick or number 1 overall pick. It's a risky situation anyway, and I could see them giving up the number 16 overall pick for an Antonio Brown, still at his age, knowing Cam Newton needs help, knowing Cam Newton wants him, knowing their friends, knowing the personalities, knowing that it would work. It's a need, and it would really do well on the field. So that makes a lot of sense. Probably the best situation right now from what we've went over. The Redskins, number 15, the question marks there, quarterback. Alex Smith isn't really the quarterback for Antonio Brown at all. Doesn't explode the offense, more of a game manager. Doesn't make mistakes, will help you win some games. Did lead the Chiefs to the playoffs, but he's going to be coming off an injury last year. He's going to be coming into this year, maybe still not fully recovered. It's a question mark. They need wide receiver help. They would have no problem bringing in a diva. Dan Snyder would not have a problem with him being a diva at all. Doesn't care about that. Brought in Deion Sanders back in the day. But, and Albert Haynesworth, etc. But still, that would be a Dan Snyder move to trade for Antonio Brown. It wouldn't shock me, but it's not as great of a fit as the Panthers would be on the field. Him and Alex Smith, a deep leg occasionally, but I don't think that would work as a quarterback-receiver relationship at all. Browns and Vikings. Now, obviously, number 17 is not going to happen, just like the Bengals weren't going to happen, just like the Ravens wouldn't happen, even though the Ravens need a wide receiver and they're not in this first 20 of drafting teams. The Browns are a budding team. They're going to be a sexy team for many people next year in the AFC North. Many people are going to think they're going to win the division in the sophomore year for Baker Mayfield, setting the rookie touchdown pass record. Had a great year. Didn't even play all those games either. Once he became the starter, they really turned it around, and they were 7-8-1, so they did not end up with a winning record, but they were damn close after a previous year going winless. The year prior, they were winless, and in the last couple of weeks of the season, they could have had a winning record. That would have been outstanding. Didn't happen, and they could need a wide receiver for sure after the whole Josh Gordon situation finally came to a head and he was traded away. They could use more weapons. It would work. Baker Mayfield and Antonio Brown would have some fun together, but the Steelers are not going to trade him within the division between the Bengals, the Ravens, or the Browns, even though all those teams probably could use Antonio Brown. They'd be much better with him. Minnesota Vikings, though, they could use some help. They don't really need wide receivers, though. That's not really the problem. Kirk Cousins has found his targets. They're scoring points. They need defensive help is really their issue. So it's an 18th draft pick. It's not the end of the world if they would give it up, but they need to use that draft pick for a defensive guy. They need defense there after missing the playoffs this year. They missed the playoffs because of defense, because of defensive issues after a season ago where they were in the NFC title game. And they're not going to give up on Kirk Cousins, unlike Case Keenum in Denver. They're going to give it a shot for another year or so. He's going to be their future because of that contract, whether they like it or not, and he can still play well and throw yards and win games. He's led teams to the playoffs before. I don't think he's necessarily the problem, but they need other help. They need defensive help. Wide receiver is not their issue, so that's not going to happen either. And now we're getting to the last team, because as we know here, the number 19 and 20 pick, the 20th pick is the Steelers, and as I said, Art Rooney II cannot envision a scenario where AB is back. He quit on his teammates, whether you like it or not. It'll be a divided locker room, but AB is not coming back, and really the Steelers must trade him. He shouldn't be back. Enough should finally be enough with Antonio Brown and his antics. And he's a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest receivers in football. But a day full of drama, then you release The Masked Singer, you won't contact your team, you're still over social media. It's just been a fiasco. It's embarrassing for this team, and I think the Roonies are fed up. And like Terrell Owens, Ocho Cinco, many receivers in the past, even Randy Moss, who have been phenomenally great in their prime, who have been one of the best receivers in the game's history, in T.O. and Moss. Their teams eventually got sick of them, and they were able to win a little bit after them too. But even if they didn't, they're just sick of them. And the Buccaneers were sick of Keyshawn Johnson after winning a championship. Eventually, you get sick and tired of the act, even if they're Hall of Famers. So eventually, they shipped him out of town, and they were done. Enough was enough. So that's going to be the case now with Antonio Brown. It's luckily a replaceable position, and they have Juju waiting in the wings. You go to number 19, though. That's 20. He's not going to be a Steeler. Number 19, Tennessee Titans. They need a wide receiver. They absolutely do. It doesn't make sense because you're not moving up for the Steelers, so they're not going to go from 20 to 19 for AB. They're already drafting at 20. That's not enough of a bump. That's the problem with the Panthers, too. The Panthers and AB really fit. Cam Newton and him could really gel. That could really fit. It could help a need. It could help that team win quickly and give him the weapon that he's needed for years as a receiver to pair with McCaffrey. But it's not that much of a jump for the Steelers draft-wise. That's why the Niners are really attractive at number 2, and they more of a win-now mode, as I detailed, than the Cardinals were, so they might be interested there. That's why the Packers or even the Broncos, a little bit better of a slot. You're doubling up your chances there. You're moving really significantly 10 spots ahead in the draft. 1 spot or 3 or 4 spots, no big deal, really, for the Steelers. And if this is done, if even the 16 Panthers are done at 16, you probably have to throw somebody else in. There need to be a current player who has some impact, a late draft pick. Something else would have to happen to make that worthwhile for Pittsburgh. But they need a wide receiver for sure. Marcus Mariota at quarterback. I mean, he's ascending. He's going to be the guy again for them. I have question marks about him, but he's their guy. They were above 500. They just weren't a playoff team. It's a relatively now competitive division, even though it has not been as much in years past with the Texans and Colts, and even the Jaguars, a playoff team a year ago. They could come back. So you need help. They need weapons. They need more on offense. They need to help Mariota, but I don't see AB being happy there. I don't see it being enough for the Steelers. It just doesn't make sense on the field either. I don't think they'd have a perfect marriage. So I was hoping I could do that quicker, but it was going through almost 20 draft picks there, 19. We know Antonio Brown's not going to be back with the Steelers, or at least our second can't envision it, so why should I? I'm going to be having some fun, and we're going to be playing these hypotheticals. They aren't going to be doing any of this until early March, but enough is enough. I think the Steelers should trade Antonio Brown. I think it's time it's going to happen, especially while there's still no communication between AB and the Steelers. That's just asinine. That's ridiculous. That's really insulting, and that's how we get to this point. Now, to round things out here, I'm going to do one thing that I did not do in my last show, despite representing and having it behind me, so you all could maybe wonder and subscribers could wonder, what's that? Well, again, we added a little bit to the studio there. There's some Steelers flavor now. It's been a lot of Penguins and different things here in the studio, even some Pirates memorabilia. There haven't been much for the Steelers, which is on me, but scoped down the mom's basement the other day, and while I was trying to scour and look for a Mike Webster autograph, because I know we had one, I found this gem, nonetheless, 1995 AFC Championship pennant for the Steelers that's been hanging down in my mom's basement since I was a kid. And there's an autograph on it. Not 100% sure who it is. Not 100% sure. Here it is, put up on the screen, so you can kind of get a close-up and try to look at it. AFC pennant. After the 95 season, they went and lost the Super Bowl to the Dallas Cowboys in Super Bowl 30. I even remember as a kid, they had a presentation of people coming into my grade school to sing Here We Go Steelers, and they still did it after the game was over. The scheduling there, I don't know why they scheduled it afterwards. They assumed the win against the Dynasty. That was weird, but we all changed the words, and it was Neil O'Donnell and making fun of him through interceptions. Anyway, we were immature brats. But is that a 3? Is that a 5? What's the number there? We're thinking here at Pittsburgh Sports Live. Dan Kongursky and I discussed this pre-show. Alan Saunders and I have discussed this. Once I showed it to him, we believe the number to be 33. If the number's 33, even though the signature doesn't look like him, it will be Bam Morris. It'd be Bam Morris, former running back with the Pittsburgh Steelers before the Jerome Bettis days. I mean, talk about an asinine, weird autograph to have for his post-football life of conviction from a cocaine bust and how long he was in jail and having to plea down to being in jail for 10 years when he originally was 20. It just talk about drama. He would make some of these current Steelers and Antonio Brown blush. It's been a post-football life of drama for him that the legal system's had to deal with. He's out now, though, so he's walking these streets somewhere. But is that Bam Morris? I don't know. Drop us a comment. Say what you think. Is that Bam Morris? If it's 33, it's Bam Morris. I think that number is a 3. I think that's 33, not 55. There is no 55, I don't believe. 35, there's no 35. 5, is that a 53? I don't know what that first number is. I believe it to be a 3, though. And I'm going to cling then to it being a 3. I want it to be a 3 here. And if it is, it's Bam Morris at 33 grand. The signature does not look like there's a B, so I don't know. But people write their autographs weird. Who knows? We're going to say Bam Morris right now. Sign that. So that's our story, and we're sticking to it. Once again, make sure to follow us all over our family of networks. Go to Pittsburgh Sports Now. Go to Pittsburgh Soccer Now. Pittsburgh Hockey Now. Find us on Twitter here at PGH Sports Live on Twitter. Make sure to subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. Click subscribe on the YouTube channel. While you're listening to this, there's a little subscribe button. Click that. Make it easier for us to get our content to you. And when you're doing so, also visit pghsportslive.com, where all of this content lives for all eternity, or until I take it down. But that's an easy place to find it as well. Even get blurbs about the show. And follow our new venture, which, here's a headline. On the Jerry Rice trying to lure Antonio Brown to San Francisco article, SteelersNow.com. And finding that at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter. So we don't know where Antonio Brown's going to keep on conquering as the best receiver in football, but it's not going to be with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Go through the list. Tell me what you think. Tell me what teams you think he's going to go to. Tell me I'm wrong in everything I said. I'm not, but feel free to tell me anyway. Tell me I'm right in everything I said. I always love the compliments. Tell me where you agree, where you disagree. Find me on Twitter at MikeAsti11 and drop a comment here underneath this video.